the day the sun vanished. Imagine waking up and the sun simply doesn't rise. No dawn, no warmth, no rhythm to time itself. In the oldest Shinto stories, that isn't a metaphor. It's a crisis so total that even the gods panic. Because the sun isn't just a light in the sky. The sun is order. And when the sun goddess Amaterasu withdraws, the world starts to unravel. But here's the strangest part. The gods don't march to war. They don't break down her door. They lure her back with ritual, laughter, and a mirror. And the moment she steps back into the light becomes one of the most enduring scenes in Japanese mythology. What you're about to hear, this is the story of Amaterasu Ōmikami, the radiant sun goddess of Shinto tradition, told like a myth should be told, as a living drama of power, pride, chaos, and restoration. We'll start with who she is and why she matters. Then we'll meet her stormy brother Susanoo, brilliant, dangerous, and impossible to control. And finally, we'll reach the turning point, the heavenly rock cave, Ama-no-Iwato, where the sun hides and the gods are forced to outthink the darkness. A sun that can say no. Most myths treat the sun like a force of nature. This one treats the sun like a person, with dignity, limits, and the power to leave. So keep that in mind. Amaterasu isn't defeated. She chooses absence, and everyone pays the price. Who is Amaterasu? Amaterasu is not just a sun goddess. In many Shinto tellings, she stands at the center of heaven's authority, bright, orderly, and luminous in both power and presence. Her name is often understood as shining in heaven, and even when stories disagree on details, as myths often do, they agree on her role. She brings light, stability, and the daily guarantee that the world will continue. And that's why her personality matters. Because if the sun is the foundation of life, then the character of the sun goddess becomes the character of reality itself. She isn't portrayed as a reckless warrior, always eager for conquest. She is more like a ruler, measured, watchful, responsible. The kind of divine presence that makes everything else possible: agriculture, seasons, timekeeping, the feeling that tomorrow will arrive. And there's one more reason her story carries such weight. Amaterasu is deeply linked, in tradition, to sacred legitimacy, an image of divine continuity that echoes through later Japanese history and ritual. But to understand why the sun ever vanishes, we need to meet the force that challenges her. We need to meet Susanoo. Siblings of heaven, light, moon, and storm. In one of the classic frameworks, Amaterasu appears alongside two other great figures: Tsukuyomi, associated with the moon, and Susanoo, associated with storms and the wild sea. Think of it like a cosmic balance. Light and order. Night and reflection. Storm and disruption. In some versions, these deities emerge in the wake of a purification, an act that suggests a key Shinto idea, that cleansing and order are not automatic. They are made. They are maintained. Amaterasu's domain is often described as the high, radiant realm Takamagahara, the high plane of heaven. It's a place of shimmering authority, where divine decisions shape the world below. Susanoo, meanwhile, is the kind of god who doesn't fit neatly into a court. He is passionate, volcanic. He can be heroic, but he can also be destructive. He doesn't simply break rules. He tests whether rules can survive him. And there's something else. Susanoo carries grief and anger like weather. In some tellings, he howls and rages, unsettled by separation and fate, as if the world itself is too small to contain his emotions. So when he turns his attention toward heaven, toward Amaterasu's realm, the stage is set, not just for a family argument, for a catastrophe. Amaterasu versus Susanoo, chaos walks into heaven. Susanoo comes to the high realm with a storm in his chest. Depending on the telling, he claims he wants to say farewell, or he wants recognition, or he wants to prove himself. But even before the worst happens, the atmosphere changes. Because Amaterasu does not greet him as a harmless sibling. She prepares. In some versions, she arms herself because she understands something vital. Chaos does not always arrive with fangs bared. Sometimes it arrives smiling, asking to be let in. And Susanoo does what he often does. He pushes. He boasts. He challenges. There are moments where it feels like a contest, like the kind of divine trial that decides status in a world where power matters. But then it escalates. Susanoo's behavior becomes more than rude. It becomes sacrilegious. He disrupts the order of heaven itself, wrecking what is meant to be maintained, violating spaces that symbolize stability and sacredness. The details vary across versions, but the shape is consistent. He crosses boundaries that should not be crossed. And then comes the breaking point. A final outrage that isn't just an insult to Amaterasu personally, it's an attack on the very idea of divine harmony. And Amaterasu, the sun, the guarantor of continuity, reaches her limit, not in rage, in withdrawal. She turns away from the world, and the light goes with her. A world without mourning. Here's the terrifying thought. When Amaterasu leaves, nobody can replace her. Not the moon, not the storm, not even the gathered gods of heaven. Because this isn't just about brightness, it's about trust. When the sun refuses to appear, the world loses the belief that tomorrow is guaranteed. So the gods face a problem bigger than Susanoo. How do you bring back someone who has every right to stay hidden? Ama-no-Iwato, the cave that stole the sky. Amaterasu retreats into Ama-no-Iwato, the heavenly rock cave. Picture it, a vast stone mouth in the side of the world, a doorway of darkness. And she steps inside and seals it. At once, heaven dims. The earth below falls into shadow, and with the sun gone, everything that thrives on light begins to falter. But the spiritual consequences are even worse. In the darkness, disorder multiplies. The boundary between sacred and profane weakens. The world becomes a place where frightening things can happen simply because no one can see clearly. So the gods gather in crisis, not to punish Amaterasu, but to persuade her. And they choose a method as unexpected as it is brilliant. They create a scene so irresistible, she will want to look out. First, they assemble sacred tools, objects with presence, with symbolic weight. They prepare offerings. They set up a plan like a stage play. Then comes the key, noise and celebration. Because if Amaterasu has withdrawn into silence, the gods answer with sound. If she has chosen stillness, they answer with movement. And at the heart of it all is Ame-no-Uzume, a goddess of performance, ecstasy, and wild joy. Uzume steps forward and begins a dance. Not a polite dance. A bold, boundary-breaking dance, one that turns despair into laughter. The assembled gods begin to roar with amusement. And that laughter is crucial. It's not just comedy. It's a signal. Life is still happening out here. The world is still worth returning to. Inside the cave, Amaterasu hears it. She pauses. Why are they laughing without the sun? Curiosity stirs, like the first warmth after a long winter. And then the gods offer her the perfect temptation. A mirror. They place it so that if she peeks out, she will see radiance. So Amaterasu, cautious and proud, slides the stone door open just enough to look. A crack of light touches the edge of the world. She leans forward. And in the mirror, she sees a brilliant presence, a glow that seems greater than her own. For a breath, she hesitates. Who dares shine in my absence? She steps farther out. And in that moment, she recognizes the truth. The radiance is her. The mirror reflects the sun goddess back to herself. And as she emerges, the other gods seize the chance. Some versions describe a strong pull, a swift movement to prevent her retreat. They stretch a sacred rope, Shimenawa, across the entrance, marking the boundary, sanctifying the return, and ensuring the cave will not swallow the sun again so easily. Amaterasu is back. Light floods heaven. and the world exhales. The mirror and the meaning. Why this works. So why a mirror? Why laughter? Why ritual? Because this myth isn't saying the gods forced the sun to rise. It's saying something subtler. Order is not maintained through brute strength alone. Sometimes it's maintained through recognition, through restoring the relationship between the one who holds power and the world that depends on it. In many traditions, the mirror is linked to sacred authority, later remembered among the imperial regalia as a symbol tied to Amaterasu's presence. But even if you ignore later history, the mirror works on a human level. A mirror does something remarkable. It doesn't argue with you. It doesn't threaten you. It simply shows you what is. And in the myth, Amaterasu's return is not a defeat. It's a decision reawakened by curiosity, by community, and by a reminder of her own radiance. Then there's Uzume's laughter. It's easy to miss how radical that is. The world is ending, and the gods respond with celebration. Not because they're careless, but because joy is its own kind of power. Joy breaks the spell of despair. It says, the story isn't over. And finally, there's the rope across the cave. The Shimenawa is not merely a barricade. It's a boundary marker, an announcement that this place, this moment, is sacred. It draws a line between darkness that consumes and darkness that is simply night. And in that line, you can almost hear a Shinto heartbeat. Purify, restore, continue. If the story ended here, it would already be unforgettable. But the real reason it lasts is that Amaterasu doesn't remain trapped in myth. Her presence continues through ritual, place, and repetition. The myth that repeats itself. The cave myth is about bringing back the light once. But what if a culture treats renewal as something you do again and again? As if the world is always one small step from darkness, and one sacred act away from returning? Living legacy, Amaterasu, and the idea of renewal. In Shinto practice, Amaterasu is not simply a character from a book. She is honored as a living kami with the inner shrine at Ise, often spoken of as one of the most revered centers of Shinto worship. And what's striking about Ise beyond its importance is the emphasis on continuity through renewal. Rather than clinging to permanence like stone that never changes, the tradition reflects a different idea. That what is sacred can endure by being refreshed, by being rebuilt, re-sanctified, recommitted to. It's as if the lesson of Ama-no-Iwato echoes into the real world. Light isn't guaranteed because the universe is kind. Light returns because order is maintained through attention, ritual, and relationship. And if you zoom out far enough, Amaterasu becomes more than a sun goddess. She becomes a symbol of what every community needs. A source of steadiness. A promise of return. A center that holds, even after chaos storms through. Because Susanoo isn't just the bad sibling. He's the force that shows what happens when power is unleashed without care. And Amaterasu isn't just the good ruler. She's the reminder that even the brightest authority has limits. And that dignity, once violated, can withdraw. Yet the ending matters most. The gods don't restore the world by destroying the storm. They restore it by restoring the sun. They don't win by domination. They win by bringing the light back into relationship with everyone else. The sun steps out and the world begins again. So that's the myth. A storm god brings chaos into heaven. The sun goddess retreats into a rock cave. The world collapses into darkness. And the gods, through laughter, ritual, and a mirror, lure her back into the open. It's a story about light, but it's also a story about boundaries, about responsibility, about what happens when harmony breaks and what it takes to restore it. Because the sun doesn't return in this myth because someone forces it. The sun returns because the world remembers how to call it back. If you want to continue this journey through Shinto mythology, the next natural figures are Susanoo himself, or Tsukuyomi, the quiet moon who stands in the shadow of his radiant sister. And if you've got a favorite deity or legend you want next, drop it in the comments and tell me, was the gods' solution a trick or a lesson about how harmony is rebuilt?